Assalamu alaikum everyone. How are you all my students? I hope you are fine and you must be enjoying learning virtually. That's great. So I hope that you have started working on phonetics and phonology and whatever the assignment I gave you during the last three sessions. I am sure that you're working on them, and it is possible that I expect that all of you must have worked. Yes. If yes, it's okay that please keep the folder alive all the time, and you must try to refer to the folder not only for this particular course, but remember for all the courses this is my suggestion that you have to make the folders. And whenever you need to understand something, all right, go and try to read your own writing. That's the best part what I suggest to the students. Well, this is session number 4. I hope you remember. And at the same time, before we talk about what is in session number 4, I think it is appropriate to talk about something we did in the third session. Do you remember what we did in the third session? Yes, exactly. We tried to understand all the branches of phonetics in a different way. Rather, there was the detailed analysis of all the branches. At the same time, we tried to understand the functional phonetics. Do you remember? That's great. Wonderful. I am sure that now, after having understood some of the diagrams I presented before you, now you're in a better position to understand, and you can specify, and you can, all right, tell the people, okay, this is the position of that particular speech organ, this is the way we produce, this is the way we transmit, and this is the way we hear the sounds, or the speech sound, or the human speech sounds. Today's session is session number 4, and it is the second week of our learning phonetics and phonology. Well, before we talk about anything else, it is very important to understand what kind of areas we are going to study today in this session. The main areas which we'll be talking about and we should try to understand, one is speech production organs, then classification of consonants, and we should try to elaborate voicing. What is voicing in phonetics? My dear students, remember, if there is a question from some co-author, somebody is putting you a question, and he or she asks you, what is voice? Remember, the answer of a graduate whose major is English should be different from a student whose major is chemistry, physics, maths, biology, or other disciplines. We must try to understand what is voice, what is voicing in fact. I had to talk about this, but briefly I touched this area, but it is the time to talk in detail what is voicing and what is voice. You can call it voice or you can call it full voice. Let me read the statement first of all. Voice, also called full voice, in phonetics, the sound that is produced by the vibration of the vocal cords. Vocal cords. Something new, maybe not. But remember, everything is happening where? At the vocal cords. The voice box, do you remember? Yes, exactly. I had to talk about this. What is a voice box in my previous sessions? And what is voicing? The statement says that what we need to understand is that sound that is produced by the vibration of the vocal cords. So this is the sound of vibration. Primarily we have to understand it. And at the same time, I also told you that the simple way to understand is that put your finger or your thumb on your Adam's apple, that is larynx, do you remember? And try to produce some sound. While producing the sound, if that part is vibrating, that means this is a voiced sound. But while producing any sound, if the sound at this place is not vibrating, that means this is a voiceless sound. But remember, in English language, pardon me to use English language, but I have to make you understand. It is generally believed that all vowels are voiced. all English vowels are voiced. But so where the consonant is concerned, it is written maybe either voiced or voiceless. Now that is something now we are coming to know, that vowels, whatever the vowels are, and let me tell you that I'm not talking about English alphabet, but even if I'm talking about English alphabet, which are 26, and out of 26 we have got 21 consonants and 5 vowels. But I requested you not to think about English alphabet during the course of study when you are just talking about phonetics and phonology. What we learn to understand is that we have to talk about the sounds of English, phonemes. Phonemes. I had a talk on phonemes, understanding phoneme. That one distinct symbol is given to each and every sound we produce. Since we are talking about English, that's why I would like to restrict myself to English, for example, since that is the area of phonology, but even then, for understanding's sake, I'm trying to refer to English language. Remember, all English consonants are not voiced or not voiceless. That means some of English consonants are voiced, some are voiceless. But so far as the vowels are concerned, always remember, all vowels are voiced. That means whenever we produce a vowel sound of English, that part, Adam's apple, larynx, voice box, or the vocal cords, they are vibrating. That's why we call all vowels are voiced sound. But we have got two categories so far as consonants are concerned. Some consonant sounds are voiced, some are voiceless. Some are voiced, some are voiceless. Well, after talking about this, that all vowels in English are voiced sounds, but so far as consonants are concerned, some consonants are voiced and some are voiceless. I think I want to read the lines before you first of all, and then we should try to understand in fact what these lines are telling us and what we need to learn. The line says, the liquid consonant and the nasal m, n, ing, as in sing, are normally voiced in English, and the stops, fricatives, and affricates characteristically possess both voiced and voiceless forms. That means there are two categories we have to understand. First of all, watch, there is a new term, nasal. Nasal. I hope you remember when I said that one of your objectives, of course one of the objectives of this course is that you have to be familiarized with some of the terms associated or related to phonetics and phonology. And now, for example, there is a term before you that is nasal. And after nasal, it is written m, n, ing. Ing. As is sing, bring, right? M, n, ing. These are primarily nasal sound, and what the line says, they are all voiced sounds. They are all consonants, but they are voiced sound. But at the same time, you are coming across some more terms. For example, stops, fricatives, and affricates. It's very important to understand. Now there are sounds which are called nasal sounds. There are sounds which are known as stops. Then sounds are there which are known as fricatives. Then there are sounds which are affricates. But remember, all these have got some sort of what? Quality. That they could be voiced or voiceless. Except m, n, ing. A stop sound, a fricative sound, or an affricate sound can be voiced or voiceless. But so far as the nasals are concerned, they're all voiced sounds. Now you must be thinking, what is a nasal sound? Remember, in English language, the sounds which are produced by using the nasal cavity and the end is nostril, they are known as nasal sounds like m, n, ing. If I say the word man, you can find, you can feel the airflow through the nostrils. Or no, or ing, sing. But so far as the others are concerned, I don't want you to get confused to learn about stops, fricatives and affricates, because we are going to have a detailed analysis of each and every sound. Whatever the sound is, I shall be inshallah talking about in detail. But for the time being, try to understand what I'm saying about consonants and about vowels. About consonants, this is the first part which you have to understand. The second part says, in English, for example, B is a voiced bilabial stop. Do you remember the first slide? Yes, exactly. When I had a talk on this, yes, try to understand the position of the speech organs and then try to understand some names are written there bilabial. For instance, that was the first time. So B is a voiced bilabial stop, whereas P is a voiceless. Both these sounds are bilabial. Both these sounds are bilabial. I'm not giving analysis of all these sounds here, but I'm just trying to make you understand. One is voiced, the other one is voiceless, but both are stops. Why stop? I shall be commenting on this. You will learn that, okay, this is what the meaning of stop is. Then of the other stops, fricatives and affricates, v, d, the, as in this, right? Z, the sound of the j, in pleasure, j as in jam, and g are normally all voice sounds. This sound j, I'm not giving you the sound exactly now, but definitely we'll be discussing them and I shall be giving you some more examples. So never please speak this word as player. No, it's not player. This word is pronounced as pleasure, as in measure, as in treasure. Anyways, so these are what? These are voice sounds. While f, t, th, as in thin, and s, sh, ch, and k are all voiceless sounds. So this is what you need to understand. For the time being, simply focus on these two statements, because when the time comes, we shall be just understanding each and every sound separately, right? When we'll be classifying them. So for the time being, what you need to do is that you have to now focus this slide that presents before you all the speech organs. That is why we call production of speech is like that. I hope that you have seen this diagram before, but at the same time I want you now. Time and again you need to refer to this slide or maybe some other slides or the diagrams containing such diagrams, or the slides containing such diagrams, because time and again you have to refer. This time we are referring to what? Voiced and voiceless sounds, right? And you can understand, for example, all the speech organs are in front of you, except lungs and some other parts. But remember, this is what we see inside our mouth, starting from the nasal cavity, and then we have got the windpipe and esophagus. I hope you know esophagus. Yes, exactly, that's the food pipe. But when I talk about the food pipe, I am talking. Maybe somebody is talking and he or she is speaking. So that means all the parts become the speech organs when we are producing some sort of sounds. Okay, so you must remember each and every speech organ very carefully. For your understanding, I am presenting this diagram again before you. I hope you can refer to this diagram. Do you remember? I presented this diagram in a different way during the first session, and I asked you, all right, remember this. Now this is more colorful, and courtesy to Encyclopedia Britannica, you can see, for example, now the different colors have been given to the different speech organs. But on the right side, you can see again bilabial, labiodental, dental and interdental, alveolar, post-alveolar, which has got two parts, then palatal, velar, uvular, apharyngeal. But at the same time, when you look at the diagram of your face, or my face maybe, or the human face, you can understand this is what inside us. Starting from our lips, alright, and going to glottis. Glottis, the vocal cords are very important. Remember, voice box? Yes, exactly, that's the place. So, the air comes from the lungs and then passing certain stages, what happens? It is released either through our mouth or maybe the nostrils, depending on what kind of speech sound we are producing. And I told you there are only three nasal sounds, m, n, ing. Otherwise, all the sounds are produced through the mouth. So you must remember this diagram at the same time while understanding the speech organs. Okay? My dear students, I had a talk about the classification of consonants, and I said in the coming days, in the coming session, we shall be classifying consonants. And that's the reason that I was trying to present two slides containing the diagrams. I told you that each and every session is connected with the other one. Same is the slide. Each and every slide is connected with the other one. So please do not miss any link. This is my humble request. Whatever I say, for example, in the previous slide, that has got some sort of reason in the second slide or in the coming slides. It is very important. That's why this time I shall refer again to the diagrams you have seen. The classification of consonants. You shall be able to classify the consonants how, if you understand the diagrams you have already seen, and of course in the coming days you will see. At the same time, I shall present before you certain tables. So diagrams and tables are very important to understand. But this time in front of you, remember, we can classify the consonants on certain basis. We can classify the consonants on certain basis. But these bases are very important to understand. Why? Because we have to classify the consonants not now but in the coming days as well. And you must be able to understand that there are three bases primarily on which we can classify any consonant. And the very first base is voicing, place of articulation, and manner of articulation. In the previous slide you have seen, for example, there are 9 areas, and starting with bilabial. Okay? You can understand now place of articulation and manner of articulation if the things are stored in your mind. That's why I am time and again emphasizing on the importance of these diagrams to understand phonetics and phonology, especially phonetics. Why? Because when you will be jumping into the world of phonology, you won't be having certain diagrams like that. You have to refer to these diagrams time and again when you're speaking or when you are engaged to talk about intonation or tone or stress or word stress or maybe syllable, all these things. Okay? So we can classify the consonants on 3 bases. I'm not referring to consonants of English, but for the time being, for understanding sake, I have to use English language. I'm talking about generally. The consonants are primarily classified on the basis of what? Voicing, place of articulation, and manner of articulation. The first thing we have to understand is voicing. As I had a talk about voice, a full voice, and I told you that if there is a question, what is voicing in English? For example, the answer of a graduate whose major is English, a student of BS or MA English program should have different answer from the rest of the graduates. I would like to read the statements first of all, and then we shall try to analyze if there is a need to. In phonetics and phonology, voice refers to the speech sounds produced by the vocal folds, also known as the vocal cords, also known as voicing. Vocal folds, vocal cords, and voicing. That means we have to understand the term voicing that is associated with vocal cords or vocal folds. So whenever there is some question of voicing, remember we have to refer to vocal cords. And at the same time, I hope what is the position of the vocal cords in our mouth or inside human body. Yes, exactly, the larynx part, of course, inside it, remember, there is a processor, voice box. So that is the place, remember, that determines whether one sound is voiced or voiceless. And then the statement further says, simply it refers to either the physical production of vibration by the vocal folds or as part of articulation, or the potential phonological distinction this allows. That is to say, the distinct difference between units such as b and p in many languages. It's not only many languages. For example, we pick up English, or for instance, our own Urdu. We have got a distinction in between b and p, isn't it? B, p. We have got Ali, Be, Pe, Te, Te, Se. So the initial alphabet of Urdu, b and p, distinction is there, isn't it? But in Arabic, there is no distinction. Why? Because they don't have p sound. In Arabic, there is no p sound. So that's why they are prone to convert p into b. At the same time, they do not have t sound. So they have got the tendency to convert t into th, right? Th. So that in Arabic, t is absent. You might have seen and you might have heard many Arabic speakers while speaking English, they cannot speak t sound. Or for instance, for example, in our own Pashto language, you do not have f sound, right? That is not spoken. F sound is not spoken by our Pashto speaking friends. So what happens? We are talking about voicing primarily. And then there is a distinction when we talk about phonology. Voicing occurs where? At the vocal folds, the vocal cords. So whenever one consonant which is produced and during the production, when the vocal cords are vibrating, that is called the voice sound. But when during the production we find, all right, there is no vibration, that means that is a voiceless sound. Are you getting my point? I want you to understand voicing through this diagram. Look at the diagram. Okay? So when you talk about voicing, for example, the first part is voiceless sounds. Now you can see the vocal folds. What is the position? What is the position? Are they closed or are they open? So what happens when the vocal folds are not closed, they are open during the production of some sort of speech sound? And at the moment when I'm talking about speech sound, I'm simply focusing on the consonants. Yes, exactly, I'm referring to the consonants when they are spoken, when they are produced. And this is the position of vocal folds. We have to call them voiceless sounds. For example, if I say m, n, ing, do you think they are voiceless? No, they are not voiceless. Why? Because while producing m, n, and ing, there is vibration. And we are talking about that if there is a vibration, that is called voiced consonant, a voiced sound. But there is no vibration, we are not supposed to be calling it voice sound, but we have to call it a voiceless sound. Why? Because this diagram enables us to understand what is the position of vocal folds inside us, inside the human body, while producing voiceless sounds. But remember, the situation is different when we talk about the voice sounds. You can see the position of vocal folds or vocal cords now through this diagram. Courtesy to Edwards, published in 2003. Now this is the position of vocal folds or vocal cords inside when we are speaking voiced sounds. You can see they are closed. And when they are closed, I mean the flaps inside the larynx, what happens if there is vibration? The muscles are vibrating. In fact, this is the vibration of the muscles that makes some sound voiced or voiceless. And this time we are concentrating on the voice sounds. That when we are producing a voiced sound, what could be and what is the position of vocal folds or vocal cords. And this diagram can make you understand, all right, closed. So when closed, what happens? There is some sort of vibration, and this is the vibration at what's the spot? Adam's apple. Absolutely right. Then we come to know, all right, these are the voice sounds when the vocal cords are vibrating. So that is the position of your vocal folds or our vocal folds when we are using or speaking or producing voiced sounds. I think now you are in a better position to understand what is the position of our vocal folds after having seen two slides, the previous slides which I presented before you, to understand the position of our vocal cords inside our mouth, definitely inside the neck area, and of course that is known as voice box. But remember, we are trying to understand, or we are trying to classify the consonants on the basis of voicing. Since the topics we had to understand, this what I said, are on the basis of three areas. One is the voicing, then is the place of articulation, and the third one is the manner of articulation. We have to classify the consonants. But we are focusing the classification of consonants on the basis of voicing so far. And I want to read this line again, that on the basis of voicing, sound can be classified into voiced and voiceless sound. All the vowels and semi-vowels are voiced sounds. Now let me tell you, I have to, and I'm bound to refer to English language for understanding's sake. When I talk about English language, always remember all vowels in English, of course, when I say vowels, that means the vowel sounds. They are voiced sounds. But that's not a situation, and that's not the case with the consonants of English. If I specify the language for understanding's sake, and I'm referring to English, even when I say English consonants, remember all English consonants are not voiced. No, some of them are voiced and some of them are voiceless. I don't want to talk about how many of them are voiced and how many of them are voiceless, but simply this time what we need to understand is what makes a sound voiced or voiceless. And this is what we understand when the vocal cords vibrate. Alright, the sound is voiced. But we must understand when the sound is not vibrating, that is voiceless. So much is happening inside us. Now you can understand the beauty and the significance of articulatory phonetics. When I had a talk on this, that you must try to understand what is the way to produce a speech sound. That is the area definitely of articulatory phonetics. This is what I try to make to understand. And now you can judge that, okay, voicing is one of the bases to classify the consonants, because in the beginning we didn't try to talk about this, to talk about such things, or what is the classification, what is the category of consonants. But this time, since we are trying to classify the consonants, that's why it's very important to understand the branches of phonetics, because I told you time and again that you need to focus on each and everything what I say. And at the same time, I'm requesting you again that please try to focus on the diagrams which I present before you during all the sessions, whatever the session it is. That this time you can understand, for example, alright, something happens inside us, alright, voice box is there, and that is the spot. If it is vibrating, alright, that is making the sound voiced. But if it is not vibrating, that means it is a voiceless sound. And that's why on the basis of this we call that some sounds are voiced and some sounds are voiceless. What I was saying in the previous slide, now this slide in fact elaborates it. I need to focus on this slide, and I want to talk something in detail regarding this slide. Now first I would like to read the statement for you people so that you may understand what I want to explain. It says that the larynx is in the neck. You can touch it by touching the thumb with your finger at a point commonly called Adam's apple. Now this is what we call larynx. The other name is Adam's apple. I still remember that I had a talk on this, And now you can understand what is the importance of this part of our speech organ mechanism, because we have to understand in the coming days that what is in fact the mechanism inside us, the entire mechanism. It is like a box inside which are the vocal folds, two thick flaps of muscles. So this is what I am talking about, the physiology of Adam's apple. Now you can correlate again the beauty of other subjects or other disciplines which are helping us or helping the learner of phonetics and phonology. Physiology. I use the word physiology. What is larynx? That is in the neck. It is called Adam's apple. It is just like a box. Inside the box, vocal folds are there. What are vocal folds? They are two thick flaps of muscles. That means these are the muscles we are talking about. These are the muscles which vibrate or which do not vibrate. If these muscles are vibrating, the consonant, whatever we are producing, that is a voiced consonant or voiced sound. But if these muscles are not vibrating, my dear students, remember that becomes a voiceless sound. For example, s. See the beauty of this sound. S. There is no vibration at all. But when I say z, you can hear me. And I think you can hear me when I am producing s. You can also produce s, and you can also produce z. Distinction is there. One is voiceless, s. Z. This is voiced. Why? Because these muscles, where they are in the vocal folds, where are the vocal folds? They are just like a box. Where? Yes, neck. And what is the position? That is called Adam's apple. It further says, in a normal position, the vocal folds are apart and we say that glottis is open. Now this statement is elaborated in figure A. After this you can see figure A, that glottis is open normally. Okay? Normally. But remember, when the edges of the vocal folds touch each other, when the edges of the vocal folds touch each other, air passing through the glottis will usually cause vibration. So that means this is the air passing through the glottis that generates some sort of vibration. And of course, if you want to understand how it happens, you have to refer to the other slide, that is figure B slide. So what I am saying, normal position is presented in figure A. But when the edges of the vocal folds touch each other, air passing through the glottis will usually cause vibration. This is the air which is passing through the glottis primarily. This is causing vibration. So that is the beauty of speech organ mechanism that nature has given us. Okay? And then the final part of this slide is this opening and closing is repeated regularly and gives what is called voicing. Now the opening and closing of what? Yes, the flaps of muscles. And repeatedly and regularly, all the time they are open, all the time they are closed, opening, closing. That is a regular process. For how many times we cannot measure it, but they're all the time in working position, all the time they're working. These two flaps of muscles, they are just playing the role. And air passing through the glottis, in fact, that causes vibration. And that is elaborated in figure C. I want you now to focus on these slides. Now please focus your attention on figure A and recall what I said in the previous slide. Try to focus. What is the position of the flaps of the muscles? This is what you can see. So store it in your mind. It's very important that you have to correlate this slide with the previous slide, and of course the next two more slides you have to connect with the previous slide. Okay, that is slide number 13. That is the source of slide number 14, 15 and 16. That's why I'm requesting that you have to focus on these, and then you have to correlate with the previous slide. Now figure B is in front of you. You can just correlate this slide with slide number 13, as I told you, because it's very important what you read. It should be in front of you so that you may be able to store all these things in your mind. When we are producing speech sounds, remember, we forget it. But remember, for understanding's sake, since you are the student of phonetics and phonology like me, it's very important. We must be knowing, since we are dealing with voicing at the moment. So these three pictures are very important. These three diagrams are very important focus, right? So this is figure B. Now I want you to focus on figure C and try to understand what's going on. What is the position of vocal cords? So that is the space you can see. You can see a circle, right? Dotted circle. You can understand that everything happens over here when we talk about voicing. So that is the part, in fact, that makes a sound voiced or voiceless, because that is the part that tells us, all right, there is vibration, there is no vibration. So this is the part you must remember always. After having seen some of the diagrams, now it is very important to present before you the actual photograph of what we have seen through the diagrams. But we have to understand, my dear students, what is voicing, because that is more elaborative. If you want to understand voicing, you must remember the first 3 points which are given on this slide. And the courtesy to Voice Foundation. Now, number 1 is sounds are classified on the basis of their voicing. What we have learnt so far is that we have to classify, and we can classify we are classifying the sound, but we can classify the sound on the basis of what? Of voicing. So number 1 is this. I'm not talking about on the basis of place of articulation. I'm not referring to the method of articulation, but I am trying to restrict myself only to voicing. Now you can see, first of all, the picture on your right. That is a picture of a normal larynx, right? This is what we call normal larynx. This is the picture of normal larynx. But what we are trying to understand, that sounds are classified on the basis of their voicing. And we understand what is voicing now, that if we are producing the sound and we feel some sort of vibration where, yes, exactly, by touching the finger or the thumb on the Adam's apple, we can judge it whether the sound is vibrating or not. And if it is vibrating, always remember we have to call that sound as a voice sound. And if that part, of course, the vocal folds, they are not vibrating, I hope you remember the flaps are muscles. If they are not vibrating, we call that sound voiceless sound. The second thing which is very important to understand during our today's discussion is that voicing is produced when the larynx muscles vibrate. There are certain muscles, right? When they vibrate, of course, we can say, okay, this is the time, okay, this is voicing. Voicing is produced when the larynx muscles vibrate. In fact, through air. Do you remember? The air passing through that area, that causes, in fact, some sort of vibration. And number 3 point you must remember is the larynx muscles form the vocal bands. What are larynx muscles? We can call them vocal bands. So there is a simple philosophy we have to understand, and these are the concepts behind voicing. But we can elaborate it further. How? This is the way we can further understand voicing. You have seen, for example, 3 areas in the previous slide to the first pic, and now you have got round about 6 more pictures. You can see the position. Can you see the position of those flaps, the muscles? Sounds can be voiced or voiceless. Yes, exactly, this is what we understand. Voice sounds require vibration of the muscles in the larynx that form the vocal bands. This is what we have learned from the previous slide, that vocal bands are there. We have to understand what are the vocal bands. Now you can see the picture on the right. So there are certain, direction. Starting from the middle, you can see how they are working, how they are changing their position. In recordings, sometimes what happens that they are absolutely closed. The middle 2 pictures, you can see either absolutely closed or full open. Can you see? On the right side, they are closed. But on the left side, you can see they are open. And when there is openness, what happens? There is no vibration. That means the sound is voiceless sound. But if there is closeness, you can see, so absolutely no, there is vibration. And through vibration, definitely air passes through that place. The next thing we have to understand is the space between these bands is called the glottis. Glottis. This is in fact the space. And what is? It is known as glottis. The space between these bands is called glottis. Right? So you can see this photo shows the glottis during normal breathing periods. When we are breathing normally, but we are not producing sounds, that is what this picture reflects. In fact, this is the normal picture. This photo shows the glottis during normal breathing periods, right? When we are just breathing. When we are breathing, this is the normal condition or the position of our glottis. Are you getting my point? All right, that's good. After having seen those slides and photos, I think now we are in the position to understand the speech organs in a different way. I hope you remember I presented before you some of the slides, some of the diagrams in the beginning, definitely during the second session, and of course the third session, and this time I'm also presenting before some of the diagrams. Now again, we have got another diagram in front of you, and I want you to understand this diagram. But first of all, I would like to extend my courtesy to Scott and Moisic, published in 2017. Right, it's very important to understand the vocal tract. We talked about vocal tract this term. We came across during our discussion, but I think we did not talk more about this vocal tract. We've been trying to understand the flaps, the muscles, the glottis, of course, the vocal bands, the vocal folds, vocal cords, all these terms we try to understand. But remember, it's very important at this time to understand it further, because we are referring to the classification of consonants, and only we have picked or touched one aspect or one basis on which we can classify, and we do classify the consonant sounds. My dear students, time and again I have to refer to English language. Why? Because I know that ultimately we have to talk about English, and we have to refer to English phonology in the coming days. So it is better that when we just make some sort of conceptual understanding about anything, for example, when we talk about the branches of phonetics, definitely when I say articulatory phonetics, I'm talking about the production of some speech sounds. And for that very reason, what I need to do is that I have to take the assistance of some language. And I have no other language but English as a reference. And that's why I have given many examples from English, right? And I think it's appropriate whenever you are studying, whenever you are listening to me, time and again you have to refer to English language. Why? The reason behind is that on one side we are trying to understand the phonetic part. On the other side, we are from this time we have started learning about phonology of English. So that's why whenever I'm referring to any language, that means, all right, for example's sake, I have to refer to English language. Otherwise, we have to understand phonetics in terms of human language, whatever the language that is spoken, that is understood, that is practiced anywhere, any part of the world. But here, now we have to try voicing, and definitely by applying a different dimension with the help of this particular diagram. You can see now the neck is there, and then, for example, on the top, it's very important to understand labiodental, dental, alveolar. You can call it alveolar also, palatal, velar, and uvasular. And on the left side, you can see bilabial. Inside it, you can see the tongue part. All right. Sometimes I told you, I think so, in the previous slide, that there are 4 parts of the tongue at least. That we've got the tip of the tongue, front of the tongue, yes, exactly. Then the back of that is the blade of the tongue or center of the tongue, and then we've got the back of the tongue. At the same time, you can see that our jaws are also working all the time. Yes, you can see that. When I say bilabial, that means two lips are working together. So whenever they are working, for example, if I say per, ma, you can ultimately understand, all right, I am producing bilabial sounds, per, ma. That is something else, that whether they are voiced sound or voiceless sound, right? We have to talk about them in detail in the coming days, definitely. But at least you can understand the labiodental. That means lips are working, and then teeth are working. Yes. Then alveolar. When I talk about alveolar, always remember, I already told you that in your own language you people call it talu. So we have got the parts of talu, or alveolar ridge or alveolar ridge. Hard part is there and the soft part is there, right? We call it hard palate and soft palate. And then velar, the back. Then uvasular. You can see, if you open your mouth again, in front of the mirror, you can see a hanging piece of flesh inside your mouth, and this is what we call uvasular. So then we have got pharynx, and then we have got glottal, and definitely that is larynx. You have to understand that is the voice box. Voice box. The entire larynx is there, but that part, which is known as Adam's apple, you can see that is a sound box, and we have had a discussion on this in detail. And you have seen the last 3 to 4 slides elaborating, and they try to make us understand that what is in fact the world inside this part of our mouth, right? So with this, I want you to, because we are very close to the session, today's session, I want you to remember all the diagrams, and especially the photos you have seen, and at the same time you must not forget what we talked about while referring to voicing, right? Well, before we close our today's session, I think it's appropriate to recall what we have done today. I think we talked about the classification of consonants in the beginning, but I told you that well, yes, exactly, the topics we were supposed to be discussing: voicing, place of articulation, manner of articulation. But remember, each and every session is connected Today we have talked about voicing. That means we have given enough time or sufficient time to understand what is voicing. And we try to understand with the help of diagrams what is voicing. In fact, at the same time, I try to give you certain examples from picking up from English language. But I have not talked about place of articulation and manner of articulation. Of course, we have to talk about these two bases in the coming session, and in detail we have to talk about them because they are time consuming. At the same time, we try to understand some of the diagrams. The diagrams are very important in the learning of phonetics and phonology. At the same time, the tables. So far, we have not seen many tables, rather no table at all, with the exception of one maybe. But in the coming days, definitely I have to present before you certain tables through which you can understand the classification, right? Now, today we were trying to understand the classification of consonants, and I said that all right, we can classify the consonants on the basis of three. The first one is voicing, the second one is place of articulation, and the third one is manner of articulation. And today we have tried to understand, all right, if we want to classify the consonants on the basis of voicing, so what is voicing? We try to understand. Yes, exactly. Now we know voicing means something that happens inside the vocal folds, that when we are producing some sort of sound, and that is a consonant sound, and if while producing that sound, the muscles, the flaps, the vocal cords, the vocal flaps, or whatever vocal folds you call them, or Adam's apple, whatever you name it, right? Whatever you call it, it's okay. So certain names are available. If there is some sort of vibration in that spot, you can call, yes, this sound is voiced. But if at all there is no vibration at that spot, what we call that sound is a voiceless sound. And we try to understand the position of vocal folds or vocal flaps inside the mouth by presenting the actual photographs, and at the same time some diagrams, hand-drawn diagrams, so that you may be able to understand what's the position of flaps and what is the position of, in fact, the voice box, right? And of course the vocal bands, we also call them. So why you understand as a young scientist and a scientist who is primarily concerned with phonetics and phonology, that okay, this is what we call voicing. Why it is voicing? Because of these reasons we call it voicing. So at the end of each session, as I told you, that we have got one component that is called self-assessment. We have to assess ourselves all the time, all the time, all the time. Why? Because it guarantees success. I want you to do whatever the task I request you to do, and today's task, what you need to do are, first of all, you have to draw the diagram or diagrams and mention speech production organs there. I have presented before you 2 or 3 diagrams during this session. I want you to learn them. I want you to understand the speech organs. And then as a second part, what you need to do is, what do you know about the classification of consonants? Simply, you have to answer. You simply have to answer, and you have to discuss that what do you know about the classification of consonants, right? And so far we know the classification can be done on the basis of 3, and this is what you know. Now this is all from me for this session, and we shall be meeting very soon in the next session, inshallah, with certain more things. And of course we have to talk about the place of articulation, the manner of articulation in detail, and many more things in the coming session. So till then, thank you very much from my side. Goodbye and good luck. Stay blessed.